Welcome to the Luke Jaeger Show. My guest today is a musician, composer, and producer from India. His name is Vishal Singh. He is most known for his bands Amogh Symphony, VST, and most recently Serpents of Pakhangba, an avant-garde folk metal band. A very great guy, a very talented guy, many instruments. Vishal, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Luke. It's an honor, and it so feels great to be connected again after a long time.
Yeah, man.
I hope you're doing well.
Same here, man. It was great to see you again. Can you kind of take us back to your history a little bit? I want to know about your upbringing. What instrument did you start with? What got you into music? And what were your influences?
I've started learning music at quite an early age, at about 5 or 6 years old, and my first instrument was actually drums, and it just happened to be, one of those moments when I actually, visited my maternal grandmother's house. And she was one of the noted musicians in our hometown and in our state. So there was always a music, some kind of music going on in her house. So it was that moment when, one of the rooms she was teaching her instruments, like she's playing piano or she's playing other Indian instruments and teaching her students. And then there's another room where another uncle of mine, he's playing the Spanish guitar and classical guitar and teaching to his students. There's another room where my oldest uncle, he's listening to a lot of records and writing music and parts and stuff like that. There's another room where percussions and they're teaching percussion. So it was a very it was a house. It was a big house. Plus, they also use the space to teach people, young kids, into music and art and stuff. So I used to visit there quite often, and I found a sweet spot where I could hear all of them together. It was the result? The resultant sound was quite. Now we call it dissonant. At that time, I didn't know what exactly it was. So it was very, it felt like home. It felt like I must have heard this sound somewhere. I don't know what it's called. I don't know what it is, but I'm kind of liking it. So it's my grandma isn't suppose she's playing something in C, and my uncle is playing something which is like an E, and the other record is suppose it's in C, it's in like F keys going on. So you can imagine how dissonant it can be. So it all just comes to my ears right at that sweet spot at her home, and that was my first discovery towards music. And I thought I should understand a little bit more about it because it feels like I'm soulfully connected to it. So then slowly my parents were like, they were observing me at the same time that I'm getting more interested, inclined towards music. So at that point, my mom and my dad, they asked me like, would you like to learn an instrument? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would love to. And then they asked me which instrument you want to learn. And then I pointed out at the drums because I used to listen to a lot of music, and when drums were oriented, mostly uh, music where like a lot of drums was going on right from the early 60s, 70s jazz to a lot of African music, percussion oriented stuff. So I started with the drums initially. That was my first instrument. And then I kept playing and I listened to a lot of music. I used to be like the first initial 2 years, I used to listen a lot of music. Like I was not like, you know, not like put the music on and do other stuff. No, it's not happening with me. I put the music on and sit down right in front of the stereo and I hear it often again, like the cassettes, rewinding it, forwarding it, and hearing those parts. Well, how exactly is he performing all these things? What exactly is he or she trying to say? So all these things happen, and then I started playing the drums, and after 2 years of listening to music, I tried to learn the parts properly, like note to note, and then I've started jamming, and it passed like 4 or 5 years more, and I became like 8 to 9 years old, and then finally I thought I should jam with some musicians. Then I started jamming with my cousin and my brother, my older brother. He's a guitar player. He's more like a punk guitar player. So we started jamming, and I started understanding that's how the chemistry works. But then I was not really satisfied because somewhere deep inside my mind, it's like, I wish the guitar part could be like this instead of being that. I wish the bass part could be like this instead of being that. And why do we have to play the same old style that we've learned in the 60s, 70s? Can try to make it a little more interesting, or making maybe we can choose the scale mode, something. So all these thoughts started happening, you know, and then I started arguing with some music teachers. They used to ask me to learn classical pieces, and I asked them, why do we have to learn Beethoven's music piece note to note? It's great. There's no offense to that. I still respect Beethoven's composition, but I would say even Beethoven would like to see somebody else taking it to some next level or upgrade it. I don't you think so? So they're like, no, it's not supposed to be like that. You're supposed to understand music, classical music. You should appreciate it. I said, I do appreciate it, but I want to experiment. And then it started that it's impossible to communicate with musicians and uh, instrumentations and everything until and unless you know how to play those instruments. And that's when I started learning guitar. And it was also self-taught at first. Nobody in the family knew that I was learning guitar secretly. So it was just me. I just shut the door and just hear the notes in the songs, and then try to find the sounds on the fretboard, and then trying to play them. And it took me a lot of time. I used to practice like 3 to 4 hours a day just to get the right thing. So I actually learned how to play guitar solos first, and then I started learning how to hold the chord structures and everything, and how to play riffs. So it's the other way. Then I've figured that I need to start learning the basics, because somewhere my limbs are like holding the guitar in a different shape, because I had my drummer's hand, right? So my wrists are quite like, my limbs are quite strong as a drummer. And this is where I also have to add that when my first playing, my first approach towards drum, when I was about 5 years old, it started with hitting on the pillows where you do not get the rebound. It's you like, we play on the drums, right? When we play, we get a rebound, like it hits you back and it pushes the drumstick back, right? So when we play on the pillows, there is no rebound. It's just one hit. So I started with the pillows first with my drumstick, and that was my introduction to how accurate my playing should be, and how what kind of strength my wrist and my hand needs, my wrist control and everything needs. And then I shifted to drums, and I figured out that I was very loud on the drum. But naturally, because I started with playing on the pillows, so my limbs were by default trained to be a very hard hitting drummer, which was kind of a drawback, but a good thing as a metal drummer, but not a good thing as a jazz drummer. So I had to figure out my own style and everything. So that's when I've noticed that the many drum teachers, instructors that try to teach me various techniques, including the traditional grip of the drum, it just didn't work for me. So I had to develop my own style of, holding the drumstick, getting my own grip technique on the drumstick. So similarly, same thing happened with my guitar playing as well. So because I was more of a drummer, and when I was starting with the guitar, my right hand is quite strong, like for picking and everything. Because in drums you do the wrist technique, right, like this, and same similarly when you're playing the guitars, the downstroke, so it's very strong. So my picking is like this, and I mostly use my wrist, and sometimes I use my elbow to do the picking. Now, a lot of people ask you, why do you use the elbow for like alternate picking? Because uh, fortunately, or by default, my movement of this section of the hand is much more stronger and has much more stamina than my this section of my hand. So a lot of sections when I'm playing tremolo picking, this guy moves a lot because sometimes this guy starts getting tired. So this part, takes the load. So all these things I have to understand how do I use my hand in playing the right parts in the right way. So all these things is just started happening automatically, self-taught. Then after 2 years of training myself playing the instruments, then I started learning about it by jamming with different musicians, asking them how they do it and what kind of techniques have they followed and how it helped them to. And I've mostly observed a lot. I've been always been an observer, and that's how all things started. And at the same time, while learning all the songs, cover versions, and everything, at the same time, I was trying to compose my own tunes. My first song composition, I wrote my first song when I was 11 years old. So it was the structure and everything. The drums were written by me. The guitar parts, the bass parts, the keys, the vocal melodies, and everything was written there. And that's how I started developing the ideas how it should be. And instead of playing the same old major pentatonic, can we do something else? And then I started using diminished pattern and other kind of you know little sinister sounding chords into blues. And then I figured, oh wait, hold on, wait a minute. Black Sabbath has already been doing this since the 70s. So I was like, no, there should be some other thing. I should not repeat what Black Sabbath have done. So it's always been like this, and still I'm learning and it's going on. And that's how I also studied other instruments like keyboards, piano, and uh, Indian instruments and some folk instruments. So just because I wanted to be connected with other musicians and to tell them how to be played, how to play this section of the song, how do you play the bass part to have an equal conversation.
Can you tell us a little bit about your formation of a Amogh Symphony? How did that come about? And then, you know, I know you kind of label it as avant-garde. That's a kind of a term that I always feel timid using because I don't know really what that means anymore, but
Yeah, I know.
but yeah, the I mean, obviously, one thing I love about you is that you're so diverse in your styles and the genres of music you play, and and that band was, and even the bands you do now are encompass that. But can you tell us about how that started and just the general history of Amogh Symphony?
It's quite strange because the story which I'm going to tell you about the formation of Mock Symphony is the initial growth, the first seeds of Mock Symphony. It happened when I was about 15 or 16 years old. But the actual formation of the ideas behind the Mock Symphony was inspired by this musician called Luke Jaeger, with whom I'm talking to right now. And it started from myspace.com and those I'm talking about year 2004, 2005 when we used to have Yahoo chat room,
Mm.
and there are different chat rooms. There was a section called metal chat rooms, and I used to often visit there because a lot of people, guys from all around the world, used to recommend band music and everything. So there was one thing that I just typed. I still remember it was 2005. I just typed over there. I wrote, "Is there any band in this world who have who compose songs which are like mixed of 4 or 5 different genres? Are there any band?" Because at that time, I think Necrophases was doing pretty well, and everybody like, "Whoa, Necrophases, the new technical death metal sound." And then all of a sudden, their name positions popped up that Vishal, you should listen to Sleep Terror. And I was like, "Whoa, the name itself sounds so amazing, Sleep Terror." Okay. Then I heard it for the first time. I was like, "Holy shit, damn, Jesus Christ!" It's like you found something which you were kind of looking for when you were a child. And then I've discovered about you and your music and the way you play and how well trained you are. And I felt deeply emotionally and spiritually connected to your music because that's the sound which I was been searching, and I was trying to understand if the sound still exists or somebody has done already, and you were doing at that time. The terror was like doing its game since those days. And while in that state, I was already working on my songs as a mock symphony. I wasn't very clear whether the direction should be like this or should be like that because I wasn't sure if multi-genre, like which we call today, multi-genre music is acceptable or not. Because somewhere deep down, although I never really cared about whether people are going to like it or not, but deep down, I also wanted to connect with people through my music and art. So discovering your music in Sleep Terror was very beneficial for me. I learned so much by listening to your songs over and over and over again, and I found out like, damn, holy shit. So this is what instrumental arrangements can do. If you can put vocals in this kind of songs, it goes nowhere. But if you keep it instrumental, see how flexible it is to move from one, like it's jumping from one part of the dream to the next part of the dream. And that was something that really inspired and shaped up my songwriting in a mock symphony. And of course, there are some other bands like Mr. Bongo, because you know that, and then Phantomas, and there's some other amazing bands like Osro Tentacles. All these bands inspired me to, polish my songwriting and song arrangement skills. Mostly the song arrangement part, because in this kind of songwriting, especially the kind of songwriting I do in a Moog symphony, it needs a lot of time and focus in understanding things because I mean, as a songwriter, you want to evolve, right? You don't want the first album and the second album to sound the same. I mean, the second album should be at least some different, some new stuff should be going on, and then the third album, the fourth album. So it's kept on evolving, and uh, listening to different kinds of music always help. And there are two ways to see it. The two different ways to think about a Moog symphony. Where in my case, it was like uh, I have studied so much of music, musical theory, and different styles of music, from folk to African music to extreme metal to funk, jazz to Western classical, Indian classical. So either you are going to use those ideas again, or you're completely going to ditch those ideas and try to come up with something that never really happened in those days. So my approach was, these things have already been happened in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. What if I do something which has didn't happen earlier? Now, people may find it a little awkward to connect with spiritually at first, but it will take some time for people to get connected with. That's why the reach is always organic, and it's not like aggressive marketing was involved. Never happened in case of the mock symphony. So people, I mean, music journalists, they all just started writing from the MySpace days. They started writing, they started commenting. Then also, mock symphony helped me to get a lot of work as a record producer, and that was the birth of the mock symphony. Then later on, I found the other musicians like James Richmond was there, although he left the band after some time, and then uh, Andrei Sajanov from Russia. He joined me because he's also an multi instrumentalist. So I was looking for musicians who are like multi instrumentalist composers as well. Because in case of Moog Symphony, I've noticed that it's impossible to get musicians who only just play one instrument. It's impossible to connect them because then they think like an instrumentalist, not as a songwriter or arranger. So then I met this guy, Andrei Sajanov. He's from Moscow. He plays about 15 different instruments, and he himself is an incredible producer and a songwriter. He joined me and Jim and the album Vector Scan. And pre-Vector Scan, those two albums, abolishing the obsolete system and the quantum hack code, were entirely composed and produced by me. And I wanted to, like I said, I want to change the perspective. I want to evolve and keep growing with every album, because I listen to a lot of Cynic. I used to listen to a lot of Testament, Death, and I've noticed how different they sound in every album. So I wanted to follow that approach as well, and it really helped and worked in my case. And then finally, in the fourth album, Four, which we released in the year 2019, what it was released in two parts, part one, part two, and we have two new members, Derek Xavier Gomes. He's from Portugal. He's although Indian, but he's based in Portugal. And then Tom Gelschlager. He's ex-guitar player of Obscura, and he's from Germany. So again, Tom is also a record producer, and he's pretty much into music production and stuff, songwriting stuff. And then Derek, again, he's a sound designer and a producer. So the chemistry was spot on. There was not much of explanation was needed who wants to do what. So it was amazing. That's how Amogh Symphony has been shaping up. Now we are working on the new album. It will take some time, but I think it should be ready by next year.
Can you tell me a little bit about your introduction into audio production? Because I know when I first met you, you were really getting into producing and you know working on your own production and recording and mastering and things like that. That's always been a weak spot for me, so I'm always curious to kind of hear about people's stories. Uh, what were some of the first dolls that you started working on, and did you have schooling as far as music production, things like that, and what was your advancement with that technology over the years?
Well, I have studied in an audio school. There's a school called Digital Academy, which is in Bombay itself. I actually came to Bombay to study audio engineering at first, and it was 1.5 years of course, where the initial 6 months they only taught us the theoretical knowledge about audio production and engineering, and the remaining months were all about practicals. So we had seminars, we had practicals, we had exams, and it was truly a technical study of audio engineering and production, and mostly audio engineering. So that helped me to some extent, but I did not really. I'll be brutally honest. I did not learn so much in the audio school because what they were teaching it was kind of okay. It was great theoretical things, but I could not relate to them because it wasn't really something like called obsolete ways. So it was already a trend at that time. So my first DAW that I've learned in the institute were two DAWs actually. One is Pro Tools and the another one is Cubase, which sometimes it has another extension called Nuendo. It's a German DAW software. It's a German company, yeah. So I've decided to stick to Cubase throughout the years. I did not shift from one DAW to another DAW because I was reading about different musicians who are mostly composers, their approach towards DAW. I was reading over the internet, like Alan Holdsworth. He used to be using the same DAW throughout, you know, in all the years. He did not shift from one DAW to another DAW. His approach of recording and production was kind of same throughout, except for a few albums. I think he tried and tested with some other recording technology, if I'm not wrong. But he mostly was into the old way of recording. So it's that kind of fascinated me, and it helped me to understand that uh, the production. Now you have to know if you are into production, if you want to learn uh, music production, do you want to learn music production or do you want to learn sound engineering? There are two different aspects. Like if you want to learn sound engineering, then you're more of a technical guy. You're more of a physics guy. So in that case, you should be a good listener more than a good musician. So that's a different perspective. And then as a music producer, if you're somebody who produces music, then there's a different aspect to that as well. Like say producers, people who produce music, who program music, sometimes it's not really necessary to be a composer or to be a songwriter to become a music producer. and it's a different approach altogether. But my case was, I was a songwriter, a composer. At the same time, I want to learn music production as well as the audio engineering. So I literally had to divide my understanding and the use of these three different fields, although into the same category, but three subcategories. So it was the audio engineering part that actually guided me with a lot of things there. You know, there's a particular set of guitar tone, like say, if we talk about Depth's guitar tone, or we talk about Panthera's guitar tone, if you ask a honest, technically sound audio engineer, that's a wrong way to do engineering. I mean, some of the best albums, music albums in this world, are as an engineer, theoretically and under the rules, are completely wrong. So what does that mean? It means there are actually no rules. You can do a lot of things. In same time, when I was working on music production, when I was studying it, I wanted to work equally on these three departments: the songwriting, the music production department, and the audio engineering department. The only way to learn more about it was to do a lot of work. And it was not easy to find work where you can utilize all three of these skills together. So I started working on my own songs as a mock symphony and decided to do my own production. And also, I was inspired by you because you used to self-produce your songs. That also inspired me a lot. And I started working on the songs, and I started make it listen to different people about their opinions and how they think the mix is. And then at some point of time, after all these years, I have figured that no matter how good your mix of production is, it will always become obsolete after 4 or 5 years because music production, the use of softwares, the use of VST instruments, the use of audio engineering, mixing techniques. It keeps changing. It keeps evolving in every 4 to 5 years. And what remains pretty much the same and pretty much in control is the songwriting. Say we have synthwave going on right now, which is called new retro synthwave. Well, the truth is the synthwave actually began in the late 80s. So how different is the synthwave today from the 80s? Well, it's the same thing. It's the same synthesizer, same sound effects, everything we're using in the new retro synth wave, but the production, the bit rate is much more higher in quality compared to the 80s. So these are the things, it guided me to understand how to use. And then after working, it's been more than 18 years I've been working in the industry, work into advertisement and working in the film industry. So in the advertisement industry, when you're creating songs for ads and jingles, the deadline is quite short. Like you have to compose 1 minute or 2 minute song within 3 hours. You know how insane it is because here the time is money, and you cannot really uh, ignore that. So my entire practice of composing songs in short time for advertisements, and the advertisements doesn't say talk about any specific genre. It You can just compose whatever the brief is been given to you, and whatever kind of examples have been given to you to compose a tune. That part also helped me as a producer because then I stopped giving myself into a period of, like, say, I have to compose a song, produce a song, and I have 1 week. No, wait, I have finished a 1 minute composition in 3 hours for this kind of advertisement. I should apply the same technique. So there should be some shortcut. There should be some ideas. Should be some technique where I can do all the things in the less time. So all these things help me to build my skills as a producer and composer. And the first thing that came into my head in the last 15, 16 years of music production, songwriting is that the first DAW is right here. I mean, we compose, we think about the sound, like what kind of kick sample do we need? What kind of snare sound do we need? What kind of guitar tone? Do we really need a modern rectifier for our guitar? Or do we really need a Fender amp for the guitar? What exactly do we need? So all these sounds comes right over here. This is the first DAW for me. And I paint the sketch. I make sure the arrangement is everything I can memorize. Like this could be the intro, this could be the verse, this is where the guitar solo section comes, this is where the bass part comes, and that's how it should be. And then I sit on the DAW. If I do not have a clarity, I don't really like to sit on the DAW because what happens in that case, the DAW technology starts controlling your creativity, but it should be the other way around. At least in my case, where I should control the tool of DAW to come to put the ideas into sonic representation. So the only way to do it was sticking to one DAW throughout the years, and I've been using Cubase in the last 15 or 16 years, and that's usually how. And because I've been using Cubase for a long time, I understand Cubase in and out. I don't really have to go and search where is the part, what plugin is going to make what kind of sound effect. No, it's not there. It's just I know that in the inserts on the seventh insert channel, I just need ring modulation, and that's it. The end of the story. So the control on the DAW is 100%. The actual creative work happens right here.
That was great information, man. Yeah, I know Keybase seems to be like the mainstay for a lot of people I know, and it's funny because I remember we were doing the Acrophase stuff many years ago.
Yeah,
The production was awesome, you know, and I remember at that time it seemed like you were kind of tinkering around with that. It wasn't like something you've been doing for a long time, but it was really cool. And but yeah, I was just really curious about the evolvement of
Acrophase,
that, and like.
Acrophase was fun. It was really fun because I always wanted to work with somebody, a guitar player, with whom electronic arrangements could work. And I'm glad we actually talked about Acrophase, and it happened very smoothly. You remember that, right? It
Mm.
was hardly anything. We both were very clear with what we want, and I think that was the amazing part.
Speaking of electronic instruments, can you tell us a little bit about VST and just the chronology of all that stuff?
Yeah. So VST happened all of a sudden in 2019. Yeah, I think 2019. VST is basically three of us. That's me. Why is it called VST? Because remember about LVM trio we formed. Luke,
Mm-hmm.
Vishal, Mark trio. Pretty much
Yeah.
the same idea over here. It's VST. So VST is me, Vishal J. S is for Saloni Sinha. He's a very close friend of mine. And T is for Tanushri. Tanushri does vocals for VST as well as Serpents of Pakhangba. She's the common vocalist in both the bands. So VST is mostly our first album. We just got done with our first album, and we are on the way to release some more songs, like as singles. We have released 3 songs so far, and most of them into the synth wave style, and mostly synth wave pop. So the idea came up with Saloni, who she's also a producer and she's a very good bass player as well, and she's a longtime friend. She also did artwork for Amogh Symphony album in the past. So she told me that uh, I have some riffs going on in my head. I have recorded some riffs, and do you think we can do something about it, like turning them into songs? So the first 3 songs that we you heard on YouTube, it's basically it started with just one riff, one bass riff, and the entire production edition started happening revolving around the same riff. So the first song and the second song of VST, if you hear it, if you pay attention to the arrangement, the same bass part is going throughout the song from beginning to the end of the song. So that was the idea, to use 1 or 2 patterns, not more than that, and compose an entire song based on that. So we were talking about doing art pop, avant pop songs, experimental songs. Then we also talked about doing other kind of electronic pop elements, which is mostly mainstream and stuff. But then we ended up doing synthwave because the synthwave revolution started from 2018 and 2019 onward. I mean, if you pay attention, a lot of there's a new synthwave and dark wave scene is happening all around the world, like how technical death metal started in the early 2004 2005. So I thought it's probably the right time because I've always been a fan of 80s synth music, and all three of us were actually very much into 80s synth pop. So our vocalist Tanushi, she told me that maybe we should compose some synthwave song, and I will pen down the words and lyrics, and you guys can take care of the production and see what we come up with. And that's how it generated. We composed an entire album, and we got signed up with a label, and they're basically helping us with the release and everything. We're going to release the first album in the winters of this year, hopefully in December. And that's it. It's mostly not just synthwave anymore because the first three singles were synthwave, but it also has industrial rock now. It has a little bit of grunge. It has a little bit of ambient pop is going on. So it's evolving, and we see how it goes. And it's mostly a producer setup as a live act as well. So it's going on, and we hope new album, the debut album, gets appreciated.
Can you take us through the beginnings of Serpents of Pakhangba and what's going on with you guys right now?
We have just released our new song. It's called "The Silence of Day." It's a single plus it's a soundtrack in collaboration with this brilliant filmmaker. His name is Niranjan Raghu. He's mostly a surrealist filmmaker, and we were talking. We've been constantly talked about collaborations as a filmmaker and us being the composers behind it. So this work is like a short film. It's a short uh, sci-fi post-apocalypse documentary, and at the same time, it's a song of the same title, "The Silence of Day." That is something we released. Also, it's officially our first release with our new vocalist Tanushri. Uh, the same vocalist with VST. She joined us this year. She joined the band this year in January because our previous vocalist she left last year because of her own commitment, and she wanted to do her own music and stuff like that. So we released The Silence of Day with the film, and it's available on YouTube. At the same time, we have released a new Redux version of our first album, which was released in 2020, that is last year. Why did we release a new Redux version of the first album? That question comes. So the point is being, in between last year and this year, we have also did some really great shows. We have performed in some really interesting music festivals and uh, venues where we were allowed to share our experiences with the new audience. So all these shows were recorded on multi-track, and we decided to re-release the songs with the new vocalist Tanushi because she added a different flavor into the vocals because the idea was to experiment with the vocals and arrangement, but the vocals uh, during the audition she did a brilliant job in the vocal section of the song because she added her own flavor, a lot of different vocal techniques which were not used in the first album, and so we thought about using so the record label no binary record. We signed under no binary record. It's a new record label from India. They are mostly about experimental bands, and at the same time they sign commercial music bands. So that's the reason they call No Binary Records. Anyway, so No Binary Records requested us to do a new redux of the first album with the new vocals because our live performance with her was pretty spot on. And when Tanoshi joined the band, she changed the entire outlook of the band because she's also into designing clothes and stuff. So she decided to create a costume for the band, inspired by the bands like Kiss, then other bands, which is Halung, and then Ghost. All these bands, they have their own costume. So she said, "Why don't we have our own costume and we try to improve our costume in every shows and try to make us look into different characters?" I think that should be a good thing for the music, the kind of music we're playing, because we have a lot of theatrical performances, we have a lot of dramatic improvisation on the stage. So we worked on the costume, we worked on a lot of other things, like we still working on the rearrangement of the song. Now, if you listen to the album Neo Redux, these songs are actually the studio version and the live versions are quite different, because that's how it was entirely planned. Because we see a lot of bands, especially in case of progressive music in the modern progressive rock. It's more or less like a pre-planned thing, as in you do the entire songwriting arrangement, you learn it note for note, and you perform the studio version exactly the same on stage live to your audience. Where in this case, I wanted to do something else. Like every show has a different arrangement of songs. Every show has a different execution of parts in the song. Like in one of the show, we use a specific instrument. In the second show, we extend the improvisation section or something like that. Because avant-garde technically doesn't mean anything, but it's widely open. It's crossing the boundary. So that's what we do as Serpents. And at the moment, we're trying to promote our new release, which is Silence of Day, the new single, also the new Redux album. The new Redux album is the remastered version with the new vocalist of the first album. Plus, we have three live recorded tracks, and also on Bandcamp exclusive. Recently, we have two bonus tracks, which are studio live recordings of two different songs which we didn't release with the first album. Apart from that, we have our merchandise up on Bandcamp. We have Serpents tee for men, Serpents tee for women, and a sweatshirt. And we are planning to do start with the promotional tour and a few shows, hopefully by the end of this year, or maybe next year. In the first months. Depends on the situation right now.
And can you tell me a little bit about the current scene in India? Has it changed much, or are you guys kind of getting back on track and just live shows are coming back? How are you feeling right now with the music business in general and just playing live shows and social media, all that stuff? How do you feel right now?
Um, it's hard to say at this moment. In the lockdowns, it was very bad, of course, just like other parts of the world. But things have opened. It's been more than 2 months. More than two. I am. I think it's more than 2 months. Pretty much everything is open. But there are some shows happening. But again, the limitations in bringing the number of people into the shows. Like I think the limitation is still 150 or 160, if I'm not wrong. I'm not very sure about that because I haven't been to shows since the pandemic has opened, the lockdowns have opened. So, uh, music business is quite fine right now. It's not that bad. It's just I mean, you used to get like say you get the cost for producing a song for an advertisement was $300 used to be before the pandemic. Now it got reduced to $100. So that's the kind of effect happened in the music industry and the advertisement and the film industry after the entire lockdown period, which is kind of sad because it's the work remains the same, but the outcome money has reduced a lot. So it's not really feel good thing for autistic people. But anyway, I hope things will improve because it started showing some improvement in the last few weeks. So I guess by the beginning or by the mid of 2022, things should come back to normal because vaccinations are on and almost 90% people in India are vaccinated, and that's why things are open and people are getting cured, and this also kind of gives a hope that there'll be more shows and more people are supposed to join, and that's why we're waiting. We're hopeful about it, how it will shape up in the next few months.
Last question. What are your goals in long term as a musician and a producer? I mean, not to say that what you're doing now isn't your final goal or your long term goal, but what do you want to see more out of the music scene and just creation in general? What are you looking to do as a musician in the long term?
I think that's a very nice question. Well, if you could have asked this question to me when I was at 26 or 27 years old, I would have said that I want to make music for people and I want to make music that survives. But at this stage of life and experience, spiritual evolution as a human being, I would say uh, every kind of music is doing fine. I mean, you just can't be judgmental. Things keeps getting changed. We have to accept the fact that people change. The taste in music among people keeps changing, and music itself, art itself, is changing its shape, its form, and the way it get connected to the audience back in the 90s in our times of 2005. It's completely different now. It's we have different mediums and everything. And I think the most important thing that as musicians we should remember that we are happy what we are doing. That's the most important part. And if we keep thinking about making money, of course, money is quite an important part of life. It's very important. Without money, we can't survive. But the most important part over here is that we can keep running behind the money as professional musicians. We can keep asking ourselves questions that there are years of training, there are years of practice involved, years of sacrifice involved in shaping ourselves into the kind of person and musician or artist we are today. Then are we doing well or not? That's often that's the thought that comes to minds very often. But in my case, I have noticed that the first thing that comes in my mind is, am I happy doing this? Am I really happy doing this kind of music, or will it survive? The thing is, it will survive if you think it will survive, and you in the way, in a indirectly or directly, consciously or unconsciously, you inspire people. You never know who is getting inspired by you. Like I was highly inspired by you and your band Sleep Terror. I follow you for years and years, and I see you doing the stuff. You're releasing your music constantly, and Sleep Terror is constantly releasing music. It doesn't stop. It's just getting better and better. So this is what I call inspiration. This should keep going on. You, in the end, as artists and musicians, we may not be directly responsible to inspire the society, but we inspire people to accept themselves the way they are, the way they were born. We inspire them to accept the reality that in the end, what matters is what you like to do, what makes you happy doing this. So it doesn't matter what happens tomorrow. I mean, there's no guarantee in life's expectancy and everything, and you never know whether tomorrow morning are you going to be alive or not, or whether after a few years things going to happen or not. So where the music business is completely materialistic and non-spiritual, the music making process is completely spiritual. So it's completely our own decision whether in the future we move towards the music business part or we move towards the spiritual side of the music. So it's a personal decision. So I see myself kind of involved equally into the both. I've been trying to, bring the music business aspect with the spiritual part of the music and bringing it together. Like you inspire bands to you inspire musicians, you inspire people to be more open and more flexible with things. That's what avant-garde and multi-genre music is all about. It's accepting things the way they are, and we learn from each other. And in the end, what matters is that if you're happy, you keep doing it. And I think I should be doing music till the end of my life.
That's great, man. I mean, everything. I agree with all that. I want to plug your sites real quick. You have quite a few of them. I mean, your Instagram is Vishal Singh, last name Singh.
That's right.
Do you prefer to go by Vishal J Singh? Because I know on Facebook and some of those sites you kind of go by that middle initial. Is that preferred, or I don't know? I just
No, it's always been Vishal J Singh because
hmm,
my full name is Vishal Jeet Singh or Vishal Jitendra Singh. So the letter J stands for Jitendra. That's my dad's name.
hmm.
So I've also been registered as Vishal Jeet Singh. But then Vishal Jeet sounds a little strange. So I said, why don't we put just Vishal J Singh as an artist name? So yeah, that's the only story.
So I got on Instagram, Vishal Singh, Amogh Symphony is your handle for that band.
Yeah,
Uh,
so it's Vishal J Singh on Instagram,
okay.
VISHAL JSINGH, Vishal J Singh. Then you can follow us on Instagram. Same, it's instagram.com/Amogh Symphony, AMOGHSYMPHONY. And Serpents of Pakhangba is the same on Instagram. There's just one profile,
Mhm.
instagram.com/Serpents,
Yeah.
SERPENTSPAKHANGBA. Serpents of Pakhangba.
And then
So and VST, yeah, VST is also there.
it has
If
like
I'm
a
not
dot. It has like a dot, but VST dot music, right? That's what I
VST
got.
dot
Yeah.
music or VST dot vibe. I honestly forgot. But if you put VST vibe on Instagram, you will find it.
And then your band camp for Amogh Symphony is Amogh Symphony Music dot
Yeah,
bandcamp.com, and then the Facebook is the same,
it's the
Amogh
same.
Symphony
That's right.
Music. Yeah. Do you have a YouTube channel we can check out?
Yes, we have Amok Symphony. Same, youtube.com/Amok Symphony. That's my YouTube channel. Uh, there's not just Amok Symphony stuff, but also a lot of other stuff I upload over there. Some other projects, some soundtracks that I've worked on as a composer. And then there's Serpents of Pakhangba YouTube channel as well. I think there are should be 2 or 3 music videos over there. And then there's VST Vibes on YouTube. It has 3 music videos there. Let me tell you, the VST music videos were directed and shot and edited by our vocalist, Tanush. She also makes and directs music videos. She's quite multi-talented that way.
Vishal, man, it was so great to talk to you. Thank you so much for being on the show and
It's an honor, bro. I mean,
all your information and just seeing the process throughout your life as a musician, as a producer, composer, and just so many projects are really great stuff. Uh, yeah, man, I appreciate it.
thank you so much. It's been an honor, and we've been connected since years. We have done so many collaborations together. I hope to do more in the future.
Definitely, man. All right, buddy. Take
Take
care,
care, man.
man.